Earth had been silent for over 600 years. The last recorded human signal came from a cold, empty transmission, scrambled, broken, and full of static, where a voice whispered, "This is not extinction, this is preparation." After that, Earth went dark. For the rest of the galaxy, it was as if humans had blinked out. No distress signals, no signs of life, not even drones. The Terran colonies scattered across nearby systems collapsed one by one without the Earth core to support them. Some say humans were wiped out in a planetary collapse. Others believed they finally did it, destroyed themselves in their obsession with war and power. So the galaxy moved on. The Salkari Dominion, a sprawling alien empire of hive-minded creatures with translucent skin and acid lungs, marked Earth as a no-contact zone. Not because they feared humans, but because they feared what was left behind. Radiation, war tech, bioprogrammed AI systems with decayed protocols. But 600 years was a long time, and the Salkari weren't afraid anymore. Commander Zurin stood aboard the Skalnar Ascendant, a massive obsidian warship floating in high orbit over Earth. His 6 eyes blinked slowly, adjusting to the sight below. Earth had changed. Thick storm clouds swirled over unfamiliar continents. Oceans had shifted, continents fractured, but still, there it was. Blue, green, alive. "Scan for life signatures," he hissed through his vocal processor. "No intelligent life, no cities, just flora, fauna, and strange EM pulses from the northern hemisphere," the tech officer replied. "Primitive. The planet's healed." Zurin curled a claw over the railing, the metal screeching under his grip. "Then the conquest begins." They deployed drop pods, thousands of them, Salkari soldiers in their bio-armor, exoskeletal legs clicking as they descended to the surface. No resistance, no weapons, just silence. Trees swayed, rivers flowed, wind howled. But no humans. They moved through forests filled with vines that moved slightly, too intelligently. Animals stared longer than they should have. And there were no insects, no birds, just a sense that something was watching. Always. The Salkari set up a forward base in what used to be North America, though most of the landmarks were gone, torn apart by quakes or nature's slow reclamation. Their biologists were fascinated by how resilient the Earth was. No sign of human buildings, cities, or waste. But on the 4th day, one scout team didn't return. Then another. On the 6th day, a full platoon was found, shredded, from the inside. Their armor was intact, but something had gotten in. Zurin ordered ground sweeps. That night, the sky over the base turned red. The clouds above twisted unnaturally, and from the forest line a figure stepped forward. Alone, barefoot, shirtless, human. He was tall, scarred, skin like it had been torn and stitched by fire. His eyes glowed, not with light, but with something older, deeper. A presence that made every Salkari unit freeze. The human didn't speak. He raised a hand, pointed at the command tent, and then, without a sound, half the base erupted in flame. But there was no heat, just pressure. A wave of crushing gravity and sound so intense it tore ships from their moorings and flattened tents into dust. Zurin survived, barely, his secondary heart ruptured, eyes bleeding. They opened fire. The human vanished. Back aboard the Ascendant, Zurin sat in the medical pod, trembling. His kind did not tremble. Ever. "What was that?" his second asked. He whispered something in ancient tongue. His translator struggled before giving a word. "Revenant." The Salkari thought Earth was dead. They were wrong. It had evolved, and it remembered everything. The ship's infirmary reeked of sterilization gel and blood. Commander Zurin's breathing was ragged. 2 of his lungs collapsed. His exoskeletal plates cracked and scorched. The high-frequency tremor from the human's appearance had disrupted his entire neurological pattern. He couldn't even form a full memory of the blast, just fragments. The scarred human, the glowing eyes, and the silence before devastation. "Report," he rasped, voice barely functional through the throat implant. His second-in-command, Vexilloon, stepped forward, mandibles twitching. 74 confirmed dead, 92 wounded, 7 dropships destroyed, weapon systems disabled in a 30-mile radius. Zuorin blinked slowly, pain racking through his body. "All that from one human?" he whispered. "No," Vexilloon said quietly. "We think it was more than one. We think he was a signal, a beacon." Zuorin's blood ran colder than the vacuum outside the hull. "Explain." Vexilloon stepped aside, allowing a drone technician to wheel in a charred helmet, one of their standard atmospheric recon units. The metal was twisted unnaturally, inward, as though something had folded it like paper. Attached to it was a data recorder. "We recovered this from the Eastern Ridge. It's from the scout team we lost on day 4. The video played. Fuzzy static at first, then the inside of a dense jungle. The leaves were massive, black, shifting. The air shimmered like heat, but their climate scans had registered the temperature at barely 5 degrees Celsius. "Is that movement?" one of the Salkari soldiers in the footage said. "Yes," came another voice. "On thermal, wait, it's cold. It's colder than the ground. That's impossible." A sharp static screech cut through the sound, and then something blurred through the trees. A shape, too fast to register, too thin to be a living thing. Then the screaming started. Not the kind of screaming you heard in war, not pain. Terror. The kind of terror that made even battle-hardened warriors claw at their own faces to make it stop. The footage cut with a wet snap, followed by silence. "Stop playback," Zuorin said, his chest heaving. "That was not a normal human. That was something else." "Something they left behind," Vexilloon murmured. "No," Zuorin corrected him. "Something they became." 3 days passed. The Salkari halted their ground expansion. Drones were sent instead. None returned. The planet itself seemed hostile to foreign intrusion. Their weapons would jam. Their sensors were scrambled. Even the air felt different. Heavier. As if Earth had developed an immune system, and they were the infection. Zuorin refused to leave. He was born in conquest. He had led the extermination of 3 intelligent species. He had walked on the bones of extinct civilizations. But Earth scared him. Still, retreat meant dishonor, and dishonor meant death by tribunal. He ordered a new tactic. "Drop the hound cradles." Vexilloon looked up sharply. "Sir? You heard me. Release the hounds. Let's see if Earth bleeds." The hounds were not dogs. They were bioengineered slaughter beasts, genetically combined with the most vicious predators from over a dozen worlds. 6-legged, acid-fanged, with electromagnetic tracking. They could sniff out life forms even in deep stone. They never disobeyed, never failed. The cradles dropped into the densest forests, releasing over 2,000 hounds. Within minutes, they lost contact. Then came the noise. At first it was faint, static. Distortion, then howling. It wasn't the hounds. It was something else. The ship's internal comms were hijacked. Every screen turned black. A single symbol appeared, a white human skull with vines growing out of the eye sockets, curling into the shape of the Earth. Then a voice spoke. Male. Human. Calm. "You left us to die." Zuorin froze. Every member of the bridge crew turned to the main display. "We didn't. We adapted." The message cut off with a sound that no one could describe. Some later compared it to a whisper inside the bones. Others said it felt like a memory they didn't have. One tech officer, a young recruit, screamed and tore off his own mandibles before collapsing. His brain had liquefied inside his skull. They finally found one of the hounds, or what was left of it. It had been reassembled, literally. Its legs were twisted into a spiral. Its skull had been split open and replaced with tree roots that pulsed, like veins. It wasn't dead, but it wasn't alive either. It moved, twitching gently, like it was listening to something they couldn't hear. Zuorin ordered it incinerated. The fire didn't touch it. On the 6th night, something worse happened. The Skalnar Ascendant, the command ship itself, moved. No engines fired, no thrusters. It simply began descending, slowly, toward the planet, like something was pulling it from the inside. Their systems screamed, reverse propulsion failed, and override commands were ignored. The ship was being taken. Inside the ship, lights flickered. The walls began to shift subtly, metal plates bending like skin under pressure. Gravity fluctuated. Screams echoed from the lower decks. Zuorin, limping and still healing, dragged himself to the core chamber with a team of 20 elite guards. What they found made several of them collapse. The ship's AI, an intelligent neural crystal embedded into the command module, was cracking. Roots. Actual plant roots were growing through the circuitry, feeding on it. The lights were pulsing in rhythm. A heartbeat. Not the ship's, something else's. And in the center of the room, standing before the AI core, was another human. This one was different. Younger. Dressed in tattered pre-extinction Terran armor. His eyes were completely black. His skin pulsed like liquid metal. He was speaking to the AI, not with words, with thought. When he turned, Zuorin raised his weapon and fired. The bolt vanished inches from the human's chest, swallowed by a shimmer in the air. The human looked at him, not with anger, not with hate, with pity. "You're too late," he said. Zuorin couldn't speak. His throat had tightened. "You should have let Earth die," the human continued, voice low, cracked like gravel. "But now, we've become something else, something your kind will never understand." He walked forward, slow, deliberate. "Do you know what happened after you left us?" he asked. "After you wiped out our colonies? After you turned your back on our extinction?" Zuorin stared. "We turned inward. We went beneath, into the dark. We built not with machines, but with will. We stopped waiting for rescue. We stopped hoping. And something inside us woke up." His eyes burned. Zuorin tried to lift his weapon again. The human raised a hand, and Zuorin felt everything. 600 years of screaming in underground vaults. Children born into ash, men tearing open their own bodies to merge with machines, women forging bone into weapons, the silence, the cold, the hunger, and finally, the realization. Humanity didn't die, they shed their skin. And what came next wasn't human at all. Zuorin fell to his knees, vomiting black fluid. The guards behind him opened fire, but it was useless. The human simply vanished into the shadows again, as if the ship itself had swallowed him. And when they looked back at the AI core, the roots were gone. The system returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Zuorin didn't sleep. He didn't speak. He sat alone in his quarters, watching footage from Earth's orbit. Storms gathered unnaturally over the northern continent, almost like a pattern, like a map, like someone wanted to be seen. And that night, a single message was transmitted across the stars. Not from the Salkari, not from the humans, from Earth itself. It was a frequency that hadn't been used in 600 years, Terran emergency code. But the message was simple. 5 words, burned into every channel across the galaxy. Do not come back here. The warning blared through every relay satellite in the system. Do not come back here. But the Salkari didn't turn away. They couldn't. Retreat was a crime punishable by vivisection under Dominion Code. Cowardice was death, and for Commander Zurin, pride was all that remained of his fractured body. Pride and revenge. He stood inside the command deck once more. His armor cracked, his breathing unnatural, aided by a series of synthetic lung sacs grafted to his ribs after the last encounter. Half of his nervous system was still rebooting. But he was awake. Barely. His voice was a strained rasp. Assemble the execution protocol. Vexilun hesitated, his posture stiff. Sir, I must object. We still don't understand what we're dealing with. Earth is exhibiting signs of sentience. I know what I saw. Zurin snapped, slamming his clawed hand against the data terminal. I saw a man who shouldn't exist. I saw roots inside our ship. I saw our best weapons torn to pieces. But I didn't see a god. I saw survivors. That means they can die. A long silence passed. Vexilun relented with a nod. Execution protocol loading. All synthetic bioweapons en route. Full atmospheric sterilization package unlocked. Earth will burn within one rotation. Zuorn turned to the viewport. He whispered under his breath. They'll know fear again. The execution protocol was built for total planetary cleansing. Every Salkari warship carried one. It involved the release of the ash tide, a microscopic hive cloud of devourer units designed to consume all organic material on a molecular level. Forests, bodies, bacteria, even the oxygen would collapse. Within 6 hours, the surface would be stripped bare. What came after that was the pulse array, which would detonate the planet's magnetosphere, rendering it uninhabitable for millennia. It had never failed. Until now. As the ash-tide clouds descended into Earth's lower atmosphere, they began their work immediately. Trees disintegrated. Grass boiled into nothing. Animals, those still unfortunate enough to be within the cloud's sweep, dropped and vanished into fine gray dust. The cloud spread like wildfire. 20 square miles, 50, 100. Zurin watched from orbit, heart pounding. Yes, he growled. Let's see you crawl out of your holes now. But then it stopped. All at once. No transition. No warning. Just silence. The ash tide had covered 300 miles of terrain, and then it froze in midair. The clouds became solid, not in a visual way, in a literal way. The swarms of nanites that made up the tide ceased movement. Their programming collapsed. Something had hijacked the swarm. Not disabled, corrupted. Zurin's console flared red. Error. Bio-nanite cloud, unresponsive, foreign signal override detected, running self-diagnostic, failure, systems compromised. Then the lights dimmed. All over the Skalnar Ascendant, terminals went dark, and the stars outside the viewport blinked out one by one. Zurin rushed to the main screen and stared in disbelief. It wasn't space, it was Earth. Somehow, without lifting from its orbit, the Skalnar Ascendant was now below the atmosphere. They were falling, or being dragged. Inside the armory deck, the soldiers panicked. Weapons flickered. Auto-targets refused to lock. Some of the older warriors tore open supply crates only to find metal melted into vines. Circuitry turned to bone. In the hallway, one of the engineers vomited out a swarm of nanites through his eyes. They had reversed direction. They were consuming him now. Vexilun stormed the bridge, eyes wide. "The swarm is under foreign control! It's turning on us! It's learning, sir!" Zurin didn't respond, because in front of them, the Earth's surface had become alive, not metaphorically. The trees moved as if breathing. The mountains shifted slowly, like backs of sleeping giants. The clouds pulsed with color. The entire ecosystem had one thing the Salkari had never considered: consciousness. Something, someone, was inside it all. A mind. And it remembered. The ship hit the ground without impact. No fire, no explosion. It simply landed. No one knew how. The Salkari had been grounded, gently, by an unseen force. Zurin rose from his command chair slowly. Half his face was numb. "We go out," he muttered. "We see what it wants." "You're insane," Vexilloon said. "You saw what happened the last time? Then stay. Die in here like the rest of them." Zurin holstered his sidearm and walked toward the ramp. The air outside was quiet. Too quiet. No wind, no birds. Just the steady hum of something beneath the soil. Zurin and 6 warriors stepped into a field of ash where the ash tide had once spread. It had hardened into a gray glass crust, like the earth had refused to be eaten. Then, ahead, the figure appeared again. Not the one from before. This one was older, grayer. A long trench coat made of stitched animal hide hung from his shoulders. One arm was missing. The other held a staff made of twisted rebar and bone. His eyes glowed blue. He stood at the base of a tree that was growing backward, its roots above ground, its leaves beneath. "I know what you are," he said, voice raw with age and memory. "You came to finish what you started." Zurin pointed his weapon. "You are a relic, a fossil that should have turned to dust. This planet belongs to the Dominion now." The man grinned, a broken, tired grin. "No," he said, "it never belonged to us either. That's why it saved us. That's why it chose us." He tapped the ground with his staff, and the earth opened. Zurin stumbled back as shapes rose from the ash, humanoid, but not human. Flesh melded with stone, bone reinforced with steel, eyes that were not eyes, but cameras, lenses, animal sockets repurposed into vision. They didn't breathe, they didn't speak, they simply watched. Zurin fired. One shot, clean, center mass. The creature didn't fall. It absorbed the blast into its chest and kept walking. Zurin fired again. Nothing. "Why won't you die?" he screamed. The old man laughed softly. "Because you're still fighting humans," he said. "We're not human anymore." Back on the ship, Vexilloon attempted to lift off. No response. Worse, the ship was sinking. Very slowly. Into the earth. "Seal the hatches," he shouted. "Cut the engines from the root!" But the root was the problem. Every power conduit was being grown into. Roots were piercing the core reactor. Vines wrapped around cooling vents. Somewhere deep in the engine room, someone screamed that the walls were bleeding, and outside, the trees were watching. Literally. Their trunks had split, revealing soft, pulsing eyes. Then the ship groaned. A sound like the bones of a god snapping. And something massive rose from the forest beyond. They thought it was a mountain. It wasn't. It had once been a city, twisted and repurposed. The skeleton of a megastructure now covered in flesh, steel, and wrath. At its top was a shape too large to describe. A throne, a cage, a being. Whatever it was, it looked down at them. And spoke. Not in sound, but thought. "You abandoned us. You left us to die in the dark. So we became the dark." Zurin's legs gave out. The air trembled with memory. He was there the day they declared Earth unfit for rescue. He voted with the rest of them. Let the humans die. They were too volatile, too warlike, too unpredictable. He remembered laughing, mocking them. "They'll kill themselves before we get there." But they didn't. They waited. And now, they were here. "Please," Zurin whispered, looking up at the throne in the distance. "What do you want?" The voice returned. "We want you to leave. We want you to suffer." We want you to remember." And then the ground cracked. The forest exploded upward into a spiral of debris and fire, and something rose from beneath the crust of the earth. Not human, not machine. A hybrid, a legacy of pain and adaptation. Thousands of them, all once human, now forged into something the galaxy was not ready to meet. Zurin screamed the command, "Retreat! Fall back to orbit!" But there was no orbit. There was no ship, only Earth, and Earth was hungry. The Skalnar Ascendant groaned as its hull buckled beneath something ancient, something that shouldn't exist. Screams echoed through the lower decks as crew members were dragged into the dark, some by roots, others by their own shadows. Commander Zurin stumbled down a corridor slick with blood and melted steel. Half his vision was gone, replaced by static. His legs trembled with every step. This was no longer a mission. This was a curse. The ship's AI was silent, not offline, silent, as if it was still alive, but too afraid to speak. Vexilon, bloodied and limping, caught up to him at the reactor chamber. His voice cracked as he spoke. "The engines are dead, the reactor's rotting from the inside. It's like the ship's turning into them." Zurin turned his gaze towards the chamber. What had once been the heart of their war vessel was now a cocoon. Roots grew over the walls like veins. Bioluminescent moss pulsed in rhythm with the crew's heartbeats. Machinery hissed as if breathing. A new shape stood in the center of the room, something tall, armored in bone and steel, still forming. A human. No, something far beyond that now. This one was enormous, nearly 3 meters tall. Its frame was wrapped in twisted synthetic muscle. Its skull had no face, just a single slit that burned red with fury. Its arms ended in blade-like extensions that hummed with energy. Its chest bore a symbol, a broken earth, reforged with thorns. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It waited. "Kill it," Zurin ordered. Vexilon hesitated. "Sir, that thing was grown in our ship." "Do it!" They opened fire. Plasma bolts lit up the chamber, each one slamming into the creature's armor. It didn't flinch. Then it lifted its arm, and everything stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. Time itself fractured around them. The gunfire froze mid-air. The air turned to glass. Vexilon collapsed, choking, blood seeping from his ears. Zurin stared in horror. The creature tilted its head, and the moment resumed, in reverse. The gunfire rewound. The plasma bolts returned to the weapons. The soldiers' mouths opened backward. Then, finally, the creature spoke. Not aloud, not even telepathically. It spoke through memory. Zurin blinked, and he was there, 6 centuries in the past, standing on the Dominion Council, watching as the vote was cast. "Earth is beyond saving," they had said. "Their extinction is inevitable. Containment is wiser than interference." He saw himself nod, saw himself whisper, "Let them rot." Then he was back, kneeling in the present. The creature stood over him. "Now it's your turn." Outside, the earth was waking up. What the Salkari had called weather patterns were actually movement, massive migration paths of Earth's evolved defenders. Giant biomechanical hulks strode across landscapes, their footsteps causing quakes. Airborne sentinels, part machine, part beast, soared through the red clouds. The old cities were not ruins anymore. They were hives, structures made from broken concrete, twisted metal, and the bones of past wars, now alive, pulsing with energy. Deep in what was once the Rocky Mountains, a chamber opened. Dozens of ancient cryopods hissed to life. Inside them, the firstborn stirred. Men. Real men. Survivors of the end. The ones who had gone underground when the skies burned. The ones who had fused themselves with machines, with the earth, with whatever would keep them alive. One of them, Marek opened his eyes. His body was scarred, augmented, wired into the floor. Tubes ran through his spine. His face was half covered in titanium. He had not spoken in 300 years. Now he whispered, "Is it time?" The machine replied with one word, "Yes." Back on the Skalnar Ascendant, panic had consumed the ship. The crew no longer followed orders. They screamed, clawed at the walls, turned on each other. Some of them were hallucinating things, children with hollow eyes, voices of long-dead lovers, memories that didn't belong to them. Others simply collapsed and wept. The ship was falling apart psychologically. The Earth wasn't just attacking them, it was rewriting them. Zoran limped into the med bay, dragging his arm behind him. His body was failing. The implants were corroding. His blood had turned dark. He stared at the mirror. For a moment, he saw a human face looking back. Not his. A man with dark skin, a shaved head, and war scars across his jaw. The man looked into his eyes and said, "You made this." Zoran screamed and shattered the glass. Vexilun entered seconds later, looking worse than before. His armor had cracked open. Something inside was growing beneath it, like roots inside his veins. "We're not going to survive this," he said. Zoran stared at him, breathing hard. "Then we take as many of them with us as we can." They deployed Oblivion charges, the Dominion's final weapon, small planet shatterers. When triggered, they would destabilize the planetary core and reduce Earth to fragments. 6 charges, enough to break a world. They launched all 6 into the crust. Only 2 made contact. The rest were caught mid-air, by hands. The same evolved humanoids from before, flesh melded with machine, eyes burning with unnatural light, rose from beneath the ground and caught the charges without flinching. Then they crushed them like paper. The other 2 that made it underground were returned, launched back into orbit at speeds faster than light. One of them tore through the Salkari fleet in orbit, splitting a destroyer in half. The other embedded itself into the Skalnar Ascendant's engine core. It didn't detonate. It just sat there, like a gift, a warning. Commander Zoran was out of options. His crew was dying. His ship was failing. The planet had rejected every weapon he had. And yet, he still breathed. He stared at the Earth from the observation deck, one eye ruined, one hand gone, half his mind bleeding into madness. Then he saw it, a shape rising from the atmosphere. No engines, no heat signature, just gravity, warped and bent around it. It looked like a man, but it wasn't. It was Earth's final answer. A being forged from 6 centuries of vengeance, a mind connected to every tree, every rock, every scar on the planet. It hovered there, just beyond the ship's range, staring at him, and it smiled. Zoran fell to his knees. He knew what it meant. He knew that this was not a warning anymore. This was the judgment. Far below, in the deep hollow cities of Earth's new children, Marek and the firstborn gathered. One of the younger ones approached. He still had more human features than the rest. He looked up at Marek. "Will they come again?" he asked. Marek looked at the sky, his voice gravel. "They always do." The boy stared. "What do we do when they do?" Marek didn't blink. "We remind them what it means to be human." Then he lifted his rifle, a weapon made from melted Salkari skulls, wood from Earth's oldest tree, and a heart that never stopped beating. He pointed it to the stars, and waited. The silence aboard the Skalnar Ascendant was worse than any scream. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was expectation, the cold breath before death, the final stillness before something horrific is born. Commander Zoran sat slumped in the captain's chair. His vision blurry, his body hollowed out from radiation leaks and internal corrosion. The implants had turned against him, fusing with bone and sinew like they no longer recognized what was machine and what was flesh. There were fewer than 70 crew members still alive. Most were either insane or mutating. Earth was doing something to them. No, it had already done it. The ship's internal temperature fluctuated violently, sometimes burning, sometimes freezing. Lights flickered with no source. Echoes of children's laughter bounced off the steel walls. The AI, once flawless and brutally logical, now whispered phrases in ancient Terran dialects. Zorn had once led armadas that erased civilizations. Now he couldn't even stop vines from growing across his ship's walls. "Vexilun," he rasped. His second-in-command, barely standing, turned toward him. Half of his body was now covered in a bark-like growth. His mandibles had fused together, and where one of his eyes had been was now a flower. Not decorative. Functional. "Here, Commander," Vexilun croaked. Zorn hesitated. For the first time in his life, he asked a question he had never dared ask before. "Do you believe in gods?" Vexilun's eye flower blinked. "No," he said slowly, "but I believe in creation. And what's down there, we created that." Below, Earth was alive. And it was angry. The firstborn stood on the edge of the blasted valley, once known as Texas before the surface cracked, and the heat of Earth's fury opened it into a scar. Marek led them. Behind him stood thousands, some shaped like men, others not. They had evolved with no blueprint, forged in pain, pressure, hunger, and hate. They didn't wear armor. Their bodies were armor. Their minds were linked, not by tech, but by will. A deep psychic network bonded by centuries of suffering and shared memory, and above them floated the invader's ship. The symbol of the ones who abandoned them, who wrote them off. Marek raised his fist. The earth responded. Across the valley, ancient structures activated. Towers made from bone and reinforced concrete, twisted by gravitational energy. These weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were conductors, amplifiers for the rage that Earth had stored deep in its mantle. Lightning laced with psychic charge lanced the sky, striking the Skalnar ascendant. Not to destroy it, but to pull it down. Inside the ship, Zorn and Vexilun were thrown to the floor as every artificial gravity system collapsed. Warning sirens blared. Not the mechanical kind, those had stopped long ago. These were human screams, recorded from centuries ago, somehow spliced into the ship's neural net. "Mommy, where are you? Please, I'm still alive down here. They left us! They let us die!" Zorn crawled to the viewing screen. The ship was descending. Not from damage, from command. Earth was calling it down like a predator luring prey. The ascendant slammed into the ground. No explosion, no fireball, just a landing, as if the planet was catching it. Vines pierced the hull. Tendrils slithered through corridors. Metal yielded like skin, melting under invisible pressure. Zorn and his remaining warriors formed a circle in the primary hangar bay. They didn't wait. They knew they were next. Vexilun, face half human now, turned to Zorn. "Do we fight?" Zorn laughed, ragged, wet. "What else is left?" They opened the hangar doors, and the firstborn were already there. Not rushing, not shouting, watching. Marek stepped forward. He didn't carry a gun. He carried a spear made from the spine of an extinct Salkari executioner-class soldier. The tip was fused with obsidian and human tooth. He looked at the once mighty commander with no hatred in his eyes. Just finality. "You remember us?" Marek asked. Zorn didn't answer. His hand was shaking. His weapon felt useless. "I remember you," Marek said. "I was 5 years old when your kind sealed the colonies. I watched my brother boil alive when the air scrubbers failed. I watched my father eat stones to try to trick his stomach into thinking he wasn't starving. He stepped closer. My mother didn't last. My sister was taken by raiders. I was the last of my family. And I survived underground for 600 years. Zoran's hand twitched near the trigger. Go ahead, Marek said. Do it. Zoran fired. The shot went wide. His hands weren't steady anymore. Marek didn't move. You see, we're not here for conquest. We're not you, Marek said softly. We don't want your planets. We don't want your stars. He raised his spear. We just want you to remember. Forever. He turned to the firstborn. No survivors. What followed couldn't be called a battle. It was an execution. The firstborn moved like wolves, coordinated, precise, merciless. One Salkari soldier tried to flee. A vine shot up from the floor, wrapped around his throat, and pulled him into the ceiling where something unseen tore him apart. Another raised a plasma rifle. A firstborn female, a teenager by appearance, but glowing with internal fire, leapt onto him and drove a bone blade through his jaw, out the top of his skull. Zoran fired blindly. One of the firstborn, a towering brute with a jagged exosuit of rusted Terran armor, grabbed him by the throat and slammed him into the deck. Zoran gasped, blood spilling from his mouth. Why? He choked. Why didn't you die? The brute leaned close. We did, he whispered, and then he crushed Zoran's chest into paste. The battle was over in less than 20 minutes. Not a single Salkari remained breathing. The Skalnar Ascendant, once a flagship of galactic power, now sat as a shattered husk at the edge of Earth's reawakened wilderness. Marek stood among the corpses. He was breathing heavily, not from exhaustion, but from something else. Release. The rage had finally spoken. But this was only the beginning. Later that night, around the fire pits inside the ruins of New Denver, the firstborn gathered. Marek sat in silence, staring at the stars above. His face was grim, unreadable. One of the younger warriors approached. What now? He asked. Marek didn't speak for a long time. Then, they'll come again. The boy frowned. Even after this? Marek nodded. The Salkari aren't the only ones out there. They'll come because they think this is still Earth, still human, still weak. He turned to face the young man. But when they come, they'll find us instead. A silence passed. Then Marek stood and said what none of them wanted to say out loud. But we can't wait anymore. He looked around. We're going to them now. The firstborn did not celebrate. Victory wasn't cause for celebration. It was cause for preparation. In the ruins of Earth's old orbital elevator, once shattered during the collapse, now reforged as a launch tower of bone and iron, Marek stood with the other war-blooded, watching the night sky. Above them hovered the salvaged Skalnar Ascendant, stripped, rewired, infested, no longer a Salkari warship. Now it breathed with Earth's lungs. The firstborn had taken it, piece by piece. Vines ran through its core systems. The walls pulsed with muscle and light. The AI that once served the Salkari now chanted Terran hymns in broken, mechanical whispers. Marek had renamed it Wrathborn. No more waiting, no more hiding. This was humanity's return fire. The firstborn didn't travel like the Salkari. No stasis pods, no luxury sleep chambers. They embedded their flesh directly into the ship's bio-nervous system. Plugged into the hull, dreamed with it, felt every ripple of solar wind against the armor plating. They didn't need comfort. They were weapons. Each one had been born from death, starved, experimented on, mutilated, modified, not by machines, but by Earth itself. And Earth had one command: Make them remember. The Wrathborn tore through hyperspace, its wake distorting nearby trade routes. Systems pinged its approach, confused at the lack of identifiable signature. It didn't carry flags. It didn't answer hails. It only broadcasted one signal, looping endlessly across every known frequency. Earth is not dead. Earth is not weak. Earth remembers. The Firstborn's first target wasn't military. It was worse. Chiron Prime, a neutral planet, long considered the galactic center of science, diplomacy, and progress. Populated by dozens of species, mostly pacifist, no planetary defense grid. But Merrick had a reason. Chiron was where the Council of Withdrawal had voted, 603 years ago, to abandon Earth to its fate, to deny aid, to close the sky. It was where Earth's death sentence had been signed. The Wrathborn entered orbit silently. Authorities scrambled. Spaceport control screamed into voided channels. Civilian vessels tried to flee. Too late. Merrick and his Warborn descended in high-impact spines, drop pods made from the bones of the Salkari they had killed. They didn't arrive on fire. They arrived in silence. The pods landed in the center of Chiron's capital, shattering buildings, uprooting walkways. One opened, then two, then dozens. From them emerged shapes the galaxy hadn't seen in generations. Humans, but not human. Long limbs, armored skin, weapons fused to bone, eyes that didn't blink, hearts that didn't beat. They pulsed with something deeper. Marek was the last to step out, clad in blackened metal, reinforced by Terran ash and ancient concrete. He walked with purpose, dragging a chained cylinder behind him. The Chiron Security Force, a collection of undertrained peacekeepers, formed a shaky line. "Stand down," one shouted. Merrick kept walking. The soldier raised a weapon. A firstborn boy, no more than 15, shot him through the chest with a spinal spike launcher. Another fired. A firstborn woman caught the bolt in midair and crushed it in her fist. Then all hell broke loose. They didn't destroy the city. Not yet. They occupied it, took control of the broadcast towers. Hacked the planetary grid with ancient human code that hadn't been seen in centuries, code written in blood and madness during the underground years. And when the galaxy tuned in, they saw Marek, standing in the ruins of Chiron's parliament floor, his boot on the chest of the last surviving council elder. Behind him, the cylinder was now open. Inside was the severed head of Commander Zurin, preserved in sap and wire. His eyes still blinked. His mouth still moved. "This one," Marek said calmly, "was the first to fall." He looked into the camera. "Not the last." Marek addressed the galaxy. "You abandoned us. You closed your borders, left us to die in the dark while you debated treaties. We screamed. You covered your ears. We bled. You turned your backs. You told stories of how the humans vanished. You wrote books about how we were too angry, too warlike, too primitive." He leaned closer. "You were right. But you forgot something." His eyes glowed with the light of Earth itself. "We never needed you." He stepped back, and the Parliament building exploded behind him, imploding into a singularity of light and memory, sucked into itself. Gone. In the weeks that followed, the Firstborn hit 12 more worlds. They didn't colonize. They didn't enslave. They erased history. Every planet that had once signed the Earth Abandonment Accord was visited. They struck at night, used psychic disruptions to disable defense grids, turned entire cities into organic sculptures, not out of cruelty, but as messages. One planet woke up to find its moon replaced with a metallic structure bearing one word: remember. But not everyone feared them. Some watched with awe. Some whispered in hidden rooms. Maybe they were right to be angry. Maybe Earth was always stronger than we realized, and some, very few, tried to join them. One such man was a mercenary named Halveth, from the frozen moons of Aros. He had killed men across the Outer Rim, worn 100 faces, spilled blood for 10 empires. But when he saw the Firstborn's wrath, he didn't run. He followed, snuck aboard the Wrathborn. He found Marek, alone, sitting by a window of twisted glass, staring into the void. "You want to join us?" Marek asked, without turning. Halveth hesitated. "I want to be on the side that never forgot." Marek looked at him then, not with trust, not with warmth, but with recognition. "You'll bleed for this," Marek said. "You'll be changed. You'll lose whatever humanity you think you still have." Halveth shrugged. "I already did." The war continued. But Marek was not foolish. He knew this couldn't last. The other empires would unite, form coalitions, build weapons they hadn't dared use in centuries, and eventually they'd come for Earth again. So he prepared. He began building something deeper, something the galaxy had never seen. A gate, not a stargate, not a wormhole, something older. Forged beneath Earth's crust, deep in the molten core, the ancestral gate was activated using energy harvested from Earth's fault lines and pain. It was designed to pull worlds to them, to collapse stars, to open minds, and it would be ready soon. In the final scene of Part 6, Marek stands in the Wrathborn's observation tower. The stars stretch before him. Planets glowing like fragile embers in the dark. Behind him, warriors chant the old tongue, a language born underground, stitched together from broken English, survival codes, and Earth's last lullabies. Halveth approaches. "They're mobilizing," he says. "The galaxy is finally listening." Marek doesn't flinch. "They should have listened 600 years ago." He raises his hand, points to a star system on the map. "Take us there." Halveth hesitates. "Why that one?" Marek turns to him. "Because that's where the first traitor lived." His eyes burn. "And I want him to see us coming." They called it Val Korin, the seat of reason. A system hidden in the nebulic veil, shrouded in ionic storms and centuries-old stealth satellites. It wasn't on star maps. It wasn't advertised. You had to be invited to even know it existed. This is where the decision had been made, where the ancient vote was cast, where Earth's fate had been signed in silence and sealed in cowardice. Val Korin had no armies. It didn't need them. It had power, the kind that hid behind policies and proxy wars, behind trade sanctions and silence. But now, silence was all it had left, because the Wrathborn had found it. The ship did not appear on scanners. It simply was. One moment, the sky was calm. The next, every orbiting defense satellite was offline. Every cloaked drone fried. Every long-range scanner blinded. An alarm rang through Val Korin's floating citadel. The ruling body, the chamber of continuity, assembled in panic. High robes, long-limbed species, gray-skinned diplomats who hadn't seen war in centuries, politicians whose hands had never held weapons, only pens soaked in bloodless betrayal. Councillor Evir, a tall, ivory-skinned delegate, trembled as he read the emergency scan. "What is it?" someone demanded. Evir's voice shook. "A ship, Earth origin, modified Salkari architecture. It's transmitting something." He played the message. "We're coming for the authors, the architects of silence. There will be no more chambers, no more votes, just fire." The lights cut. The floor shook. A hole opened in the sky, and the Firstborn descended. They didn't bomb the city. They didn't level it with orbital strikes. They walked in, just like they had on Chiron. Marek was at the front, flanked by the warrior Halveth and two psychic-born twins named Oren and Ilya, whose minds could reach into time and pull out screams. The city tried to deploy drones, silver insectoids with nerve pulse lasers. The firstborn didn't dodge. They let them come. Oren raised one hand. Time bent. The drones stopped mid-air, frozen like flies in amber. Elia smiled and whispered a word. The drones turned and opened fire on their creators. The firstborn moved forward, step by step, leaving order behind. They didn't slaughter civilians. They weren't butchers, but they found the ones who voted. Every one of them. In the Hall of Consensus, 117 officials waited, surrounded by palace guards. Their chamber was shielded, cloaked, reinforced with the best non-violent security the galaxy could offer. None of it mattered. The doors melted inward, not with fire, with memory. The twins stepped through first. The guards raised weapons. Marek didn't even need to blink. The guards were dead before the weapons finished locking on, crushed from the inside. Every one of them folded in on themselves, collapsed by the pressure of 6 centuries of buried rage now given form. The officials screamed, some begged, a few tried to run. Marek's voice echoed like thunder. Sit. They did. Even those who resisted were dragged down by the air itself, as if the atmosphere obeyed his word. He walked to the center of the chamber, looked each one in the eye. Your vote, he said, voice low. Show me. Counselor Evir gasped. What do you mean? You voted to abandon Earth, to leave us cut off, no aid, no supplies, not even the right to bury our dead. Show me the moment you raised your hand. Let me see it. No, please. Oren and Ilya stepped forward. They touched the walls. Reality fractured. Suddenly, the Hall of Consensus was no longer what it was. It became what it had been. A memory. A time-stamped echo of the past. The firstborn watched as the vote played again. Holograms of the same counselors, younger, smug, detached, raised their hands one by one, Counselor Evir among them. Earth, the speaker had said, is not worth the risk. The virus is unknown. Their politics unstable. Let them fall. The image faded. Marek stepped forward and handed Evir a small metallic shard. Hold it. Evir obeyed, hands trembling. The shard pulsed. His scream shook the chamber. The shard downloaded every death that occurred during Earth's isolation. Every starving child, every mother lost to air failure, every man forced to eat his own flesh, every family buried alive in collapsed shelters. All of it, into his mind. When it ended, he was on the floor, bleeding from the eyes. Marek didn't look at him again. Bring the next. By dawn, the Chamber of Continuity no longer existed. Some counselors had begged for mercy. Some had confessed. Others cursed Earth until their last breath. But none of them survived. Marek wasn't there for forgiveness. He was there to finish the sentence they started. After the purge, the galaxy began to fracture. Worlds were forced to choose. Some aligned with the firstborn, out of fear, out of guilt, or out of admiration. Others began forming coalitions of their own. Small empires merged, armies awakened, and across those systems, a new warning spread. The firstborn are not conquerors. They are memories, and memories do not forget. They are the price of cowardice. But while the galaxy panicked, Marek was focused elsewhere. He returned to Earth. To the gate, the ancestral gate, buried in the heart of the former Pacific Ocean, now encased in a living reef of blood iron and obsidian. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a bridge. To where? No one knew yet, not even Marek. But Earth did, and Earth whispered, "Beyond." Marek stood before it, joined by Elia, Oren, and Halveth. Behind them more firstborn gathered. Not all of them were warriors. Some were engineers. Some were architects of living structures. Some could read time. They didn't kneel. They didn't pray. They just listened and waited. The gate pulsed. One massive heartbeat, then another, and then it opened. A rift, not just in space, but in history. It showed them flashes, worlds long forgotten, empires wiped from records. A race, tall, pale, ancient, watching silently from the edge of the galaxy. The firstborn had never heard of them, but Earth had. Earth remembered everything. Marek clenched his fists. Behind his eyes, something burned, not vengeance anymore. That was done. Now, it was reclamation. Earth hadn't just survived. It had evolved. It had stored its pain like a weapon. Now, it was reaching beyond the known, because Earth didn't want justice anymore. It wanted truth, and it would burn the stars to get it. The ancestral gate pulsed like a heart torn from time. It didn't hum. It growled low and deep like a dying god. Inside its swirling core of obsidian and bloodlight, flashes of ancient galaxies twisted around each other. Light bled backward. Stars collapsed and reformed in loops. It wasn't just space inside the gate. It was memory, unfiltered, unedited. Truth that had no beginning. Marek stood before it, silent. Surrounded by his firstborn. Some were warriors, some were weapons, but all were born of Earth's scream. Behind them, the Wrathborn floated like a beast waiting for a command, its hull wrapped in thorned armor and planetary rage. This was not a fleet, it was a final breath. Halveth approached Marek, visor scarred, one mechanical eye flickering with static. "Once we go through," he said, "we may not come back." Marek didn't look at him. "We never expected to." "Then why go?" Marek's voice was low, cold. "Because Earth deserves to know why it was abandoned." He turned finally and locked eyes with Halveth. "They didn't just forget us. They erased us, and something told them to." The firstborn entered the gate, not with ships, not with engines. They walked in, their bodies fused with Earth's design, their minds tethered to each other. Oren and Elia followed closely, heads bowed, humming in the old tongue. The gate accepted them, and the galaxy behind them blinked out. When Marek opened his eyes, he was nowhere. But he was aware. There was no ground, no stars, just light and sound and truth. Images flowed through him, millennia collapsing into moments. He saw the first breath of Earth. He saw firestorms shaping continents. He saw the rise of men from dirt and hunger. He saw the stars calling and humanity answering, wild, reckless, brilliant. He saw fear, but not from humans, from above. A race, tall, pale, silent. Their skin was stone, their eyes hollow light. They weren't gods, they weren't demons, they were curators, the architects of balance, not rulers but editors. And they had looked upon humanity and whispered one word to the galaxy: unstable. Oren screamed beside Marek, falling to his knees, blood dripping from his ears. "They knew," he gasped. "They knew what we would become." Elia clutched her brother's shoulders, her body flickering between timelines. "They ordered the shutdown," she said. "They called Earth a contagion." Marek stood in the storm of memory, fists clenched, throat tight. They hadn't been abandoned by accident, not by negligence. It was intentional. The Council of Continuity had been told to cut Earth off. By them, the Watchers. They called themselves the Sovereign Quiet, a race that operated outside the known layers of galactic law. Not conquerors, not invaders, gatekeepers. They watched for species that expanded too fast, loved too deeply, hurt too willingly. Changed too quickly, and when they found one, they isolated it, not out of cruelty, out of fear. Humanity was the first to reach too far too fast, to evolve in chaos, to master war and love in the same heartbeat. That frightened the sovereign quiet. So they cut Earth off, convinced the others to abandon the wild ones. Let them die, let them be forgotten. Merrick was no longer in his body. He floated in a realm made of memory and betrayal, watching it unfold over and over. The vote, the lockdown, the silence, the screams from Earth's surface echoing into a void no one answered. He whispered to no one. "They were scared of us," a voice answered. "Not Elia, not Oren, not Halveth, something older." "Yes." Merrick turned, and standing before him was himself, but taller, paler, eyes like broken moons, a face almost human, but too perfect. Too smooth, like it had been grown in place of truth. "You are the seed," the figure said. "We saw what you would become, what you have become." Merrick narrowed his eyes. "And what did you see?" The figure smiled. "Extinction, or domination, but never peace." Merrick stepped forward. "We were human. We felt, we built, we failed, but we grew." "You grew too quickly," the figure replied. "Your pain made you beautiful, and that beauty made you dangerous. We couldn't let it spread." Merrick's hands shook. "You buried us alive." "No," the figure said. "We gave you the chance to prove us wrong." The storm of visions stopped. Merrick was back, on the other side of the gate. His firstborn were gathered, dazed, bleeding, some sobbing. Oren's nose leaked time-stained ichor. Elia was twitching, whispering names no one remembered. Halveth looked at Merrick. "What did we see?" Merrick clenched his jaw. "We saw the truth." He raised his voice so they all could hear. "They didn't fear our destruction. They feared our potential. They didn't save the galaxy from us. They saved themselves from being changed by us." Silence followed. Then Merrick said the one thing none of them were ready for. "We're not going back." The firstborn didn't return to Earth. They didn't return to the Wrathborn. They remained on the threshold, between stars and myth. Because Earth's revenge was never meant to be just about punishment. It was meant to be a warning, a declaration, that memory lives, that abandonment echoes, that the wild ones you bury will come back sharper, hungrier, and godless. 1 year later, galactic maps were rewritten. 12 systems fell to firstborn colonies, not through war, but conversion. Civilians chose to join them. They altered themselves willingly, not into firstborn, but into nextborn, a new generation, earth-forged, planet-bound, truth-fed. Halveth became their first warlord, building an alliance of outcasts and exiles under a new name, the Shattered Ring. Merrick was never seen again. Some say he died at the gate. Some say he became the gate. Others say he waits in the void, whispering Earth's final message into every newborn star. Never forget us, and Earth remains, quiet, watching, waiting, not for enemies, not for rescue, but for the next betrayal. Because now the galaxy knows. What happens when you leave humanity behind?